Green, what did President Trump do to get impeached? I know you guys are voting on your impeachment articles today. Can you please take a second to get off the phone and explain to the American public what President Trump has done?
Threatening members of Congress with execution, something that you would not understand.
So this is pretty interesting. It looks like internal tension and frustration is starting to build amongst House Democrats with their own members like Representative Al Green and Shri Thanedar, who keep on bringing these performative, grandstanding, useless articles of impeachment against President Trump, which is kind of hilarious because I think we all collectively have Democrat fatigue. You know, we're tired of the constant protesting, the screeching about how everything is Hitler, this is unprecedented, most corrupt administration in history. We are, of course, tired of watching the same stupid attempts at impeachment over and over again, but it turns out that Democrats are actually so obnoxious that even their own members within Congress are also having the same Democrat fatigue, although I have to say to a degree, unless the quote-unquote sane or normal members of the party are actually going to publicly stand up and do something to push back against these progressive radicals, they are utterly useless, and you should still absolutely count them as part of the same exact camp. But we'll talk about that later in the video. Of course, this is coming off of the heels yesterday that we reported to you. Representative Al Green once again tried to bring articles of impeachment against President Trump. This is now the 7th time in his career that he's done that. 7 times. But what was noteworthy or interesting was not the fact that obviously the articles failed. Yes, Republicans control Congress. It's the fact that now publicly up to 20 different Democrats actually voted alongside the Republicans to kill the impeachment resolution. And we'll tell you about the potential reasons that could be in today's video, as well as now show you Al Green's response, because he's now trying to essentially accuse other members of the Democrat Party of being racist for telling him he shouldn't bring articles of impeachment. Because don't you know, the guy has been around since like 1200 BC trying to impeach Trump, and he was around for civil rights. And so look, literally Trump is doing Jim Crow, and all the Democrats who are, no, he actually tried to say this, right? All the Democrats who are telling him not to impeach Trump for performative, useless reasons are actually also as racist as the Republicans, it turns out. Anyways, let's get into the story. Pretty interesting in today's video. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. We greatly appreciate the support. And with that said, we just got this piece out of Axios reporting that infuriated Dems actually helped the GOP quash yet another Trump impeachment vote. What is that all about? Well, nearly 24 House Democrats voted with Republicans on Thursday to block one of their own members from forcing a vote to impeach President Trump. Why does it matter? Because the vote enraged Democrats, many of whom despise the increasingly caustic use of impeachment as a political tool, but also don't want to be seen as supporting Trump's actions and risk angering the party base. And of course, that makes sense in terms of what they're saying, because, you know, on one hand, they have these crazy, violent No Kings protesters as their own political base, right? The very people who celebrated the death of Charlie Kirk. On the other hand, many of them likely come from swing districts and understand going into the midterms, yes, signaling, you know, obviously Democrats, if they win the House, are going to try to impeach Trump, but signaling that to the world and just running on that whole idea, maybe not the most plausible. But, you know, at the same time, I'm again going to say, unless you're going to publicly come out and push back against this stuff, you don't get any credit from us, right? All it says that is that you're a coward. I mean, sure, obviously, there's a lot of members of Democrat leadership who probably want the same end goals, right? They're just as radical in their heart, but they're more strategic. And so they're saying, hey, maybe we should drop the wokeism a little bit. Maybe we shouldn't be as Trump deranged. But if you're going to hand power to the mob, then you're an enabler, you know? But anyways, apparently one anonymous senior House Democrat, so this is someone in leadership that Axios interviewed, but notably, right, they're too scared to say it publicly. Why do you think that is? Of course, went on to say, quote, I hate it. One senior House Democrat told Axios on the condition of being anonymous to speak candidly about a sensitive vote. Another House Democrat said, and I quote, this is not a team effort. It puts us in a difficult position. Well, of course it does. All these grandstanding idiots who think they're so cool. Oh, look, no kings. We're fighting so hard against Trump. Let's uplift people like Zoran Mamdani, of course, are causing massive electoral problems for the Democrats. But obviously, on one hand, they cannot control their own ranks. And secondly, again, the voter base is more radical than the leadership, which is the exact situation you're getting. Now, the vote was forced by Representative Al Green of Texas, who said in a House floor speech Thursday morning that Trump is, quote, an abuser of presidential power. Now, Green pointed to Trump saying last month that a video of House Democrats urging military members to disobey lawful orders was seditious behavior. You may remember that whole situation, but it's worth noting that Al Green has attempted to, again, impeach Trump over literally everything. I think it was in February, right as he started the presidency. He tried to impeach Trump over dastardly acts and dastardly deeds, or no, dastardly words and dastardly deeds. That's actually what he said. So literally it's just like, I don't like Trump, therefore I'm going to impeach him. But, this all went on, and House Minority Leader, it's worth noting here, Hakeem Jeffries, Whip Kathleen Clark, and Democrat Caucus Chair Pete Aguilar all shifted from voting to table in June to voting present on Thursday. So in other words, what are they saying? We don't support this. We don't like the fact that our own members just went rogue because this is not something we were pushing to do, but we don't want to get the ire of the Democrat base saying, oh, we didn't want to do a useless impeachment of President Trump. So, there you essentially have it. But, again, here I say, right, that if you're unwilling to push back against these radicals, then you get no respect from me. And that is, of course, a situation I think you're dealing with in Democrat leadership.
Well, that's not woke. Yes, maybe.
I'm saying woke, not even liberal.
Right.
I'm making that distinction,
right,
which I think is a fair distinction.
That's another reason. Another one we can add to the list of woke is not liberal.
I think left versus liberal or woke versus liberal is an important distinction.
Right.
I will say what makes you different is few liberals stand up to the woke. And few liberals are willing to stand up to woke.
Absolutely.
Right, exactly. So I asked to Democrat leadership, if this is how you really feel, then what's the point of anonymously talking to Axios and complaining about it? Why don't you stand up and do something? Oh, actually, you can't. Now, you're going to run into the midterms next year with some type of moderate face saying, oh, we don't want to impeach Trump necessarily. We're just a party of affordability and healthcare, and that's all we're about. But no. If you're not going to stop these people, if you're too scared even to call them out, then the signs you're sending us are very clear as to who runs the Democrat Party. As a matter of fact, people like Al Green, Shri Thanedar, Jasmine Crockett, AOC, all of these characters are truly the people in charge of the show. Because I think it's worth noting that House Democratic leadership doesn't actually disagree with people like Al Green on the principle. It's all about the optics and strategy, right? So to a degree, maybe I simply respect Al Green more because at least he's being honest about what he's about, right? Democrat leadership, Hakeem Jeffries, of course, planned to run in the midterm saying, we're not necessarily going to impeach Trump. We're just a party of affordability and healthcare and all this stuff. And then the moment you get into office, magically, watch this, at the start of 2027, if they win the House, there's going to be some random issue that comes up that is just a normal political story, but you're going to say, oh, see, Trump did this, therefore he must be impeached. You know how we know that? Because you already did this once before in the first term. This was the exact cycle that Nancy Pelosi went through. There's all this stuff, Russiagate, whatever, but at the time, Democrats did not control the House. Then you had that whole Hunter Biden Ukraine thing that was a big nothing burger, but they said, oh, wow, pretended to be shocked. I can't believe the president did this. And then, of course, follow through on their plan to impeach him anyway. So, again, that's the situation here. They're not actually mad because Al Green is trying to impeach Trump. They're mad because Al Green is simply giving away the game plan instead of being allowed to lie and gaslight the American people in terms of what the Democrats are all about. And that's exactly why I say, to a very large extent, I don't think there are necessarily a whole lot of innocent Democrats within congressional leadership or basically any elected halls of office these days, right? They can try to distance, they can try to say, we're not a part of this effort. But yeah, voting present Hakeem Jeffries is not exactly going to, first of all, appease the far left, who still sees you as not being deranged enough, or is it going to appease us, who simply are still seeing, no, look at this, Democrats still want to impeach Trump. Sure, 20 representatives voted to table the resolution. Okay, fine, good for them. The vast majority of your caucus still voted to impeach Trump. So don't run into the midterm saying, no, that's not going to be our focus. Of course it's going to be your focus. Now, that said, That's one side of it, right? The kind of Democrat establishment not really liking the optics of all of this. I do now also want to show you what Representative Al Green said in response, because yes, I kid you not, right? Tried to invoke racism to push back on members of his own party who said he wasn't being strategic by announcing articles of impeachment that were obviously going to fail. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and still I rise to announce that last night I called for the impeachment of Donald John Trump, President of the United States of America, for threatening judges and for calling for the execution of members of Congress. If ever there was a person who ought to be impeached, it's Donald John Trump. Now, there are many people who don't want to see this happen. They don't want to vote for impeachment. Well, there were people who didn't want to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge, but they marched on. I shall march on. I've been told that this vote will take place sometime after 1:30 today. I assure you I'll be here for that vote. I will also speak on Friday for about 1 hour after about 11 o'clock. I will explain more about it at that time. This president is a reckless, ruthless, lawless person who doesn't deserve the title of President of the United States of America. I yield back.
Members are reminded to refrain from engaging personalities towards the president.
Yeah, guys, don't you know? He's literally MLK. He's a civil rights leader, and how dare you not stand with him? But if you thought he was done, no, this whole rant about how he's basically fighting segregation in Selma, Alabama, by filing failed articles of impeachment actually goes on a lot more. So take a listen.
I know what happened in my lifetime when I had to go to the back door to get my food. I remember when I had to drink from a filthy colored water fountain, when there was a pristine white water fountain right next to me. I know. I lived it.
What?
I remember how I had to sit in the back of the bus. And if there weren't enough seats for Anglos, we called them white people. I don't like the term. But when there weren't enough seats for Anglos, then I had to move. I know what's going on. I see it. Well, you're saying no, that's not happening right now. No, but we're headed in that direction. We're headed in that direction. I don't want to return to that past where I was a suspect simply because of the color of my skin. I was a suspect.
Okay, so hold on. First of all, he basically tries to compare, again, this whole situation is segregation. I lived through segregation, so how dare you question me on any issue, right? You know, you don't know what you're talking about. You're disrespecting the people who fought in civil rights, or whatever crap he's trying to say here, right? And then he follows up by saying, now, is that happening in America today? Is that what Trump is doing? No, it's not, but it kind of reminds me of it. Oh, no, this is why we have to impeach. It's like, what? What? But of course, all right, why is he really giving this speech? Again, now understanding the internal dynamics, it's because within the Democrat Party, a bunch of their members were basically saying, this is not a good idea. You're embarrassing us. We don't like what you're doing. And so he just basically responds by saying, I was alive during civil rights. You're racist. Hey, don't say that. And yeah. Now, I guess to a degree it was an effective strategy because, again, 20 members did vote against what he was doing, but the majority still did. They still voted in favor. So I guess the tactic is still ever alive, right? Call people racist and get them in line. So yeah, apparently the Democrats who don't think this is strategic are actually racist. Hakeem Jeffries is racist, guys.
Suspect. We are now at a point in this country to tie this together where there are people who are suspect because of the way they look, just as I was a suspect because of the way I looked. If you are Latino in the United States of America.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say. Just, typical liberal nonsense. So, an illegal alien got deported. This is literally Nazi Germany. Black person got arrested for committing violent crime. Don't you know they also arrested Martin Luther King, so therefore you can't arrest people, blah, 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 whatever. Great job too, Democrats. I mean, I'm sure the American people watched this speech and just thought, wow, making such good points. This literal fossil in front of my face who seems like some crazy guy screaming at me with a cane. Yeah, You know, this is civil rights, guys. This is just like 1964. I don't know. But it's worth noting that despite all of the contention within the Democrat Party around the whole impeachment issue, this is not going away anytime soon for a reason I'll explain to you in a second. But it's worth noting as well, we also just got the announcement this week. So just to kind of keep a running total here, this week, Al Green tried to impeach Trump for the 7th time, but he was not alone. Shri Thanedar, the guy who looks like a lab experiment and can't speak English, he tried to file articles of impeachment against Pete Hegseth. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Michigan Congresswoman Haley Stevens, who is currently trying to run for Senate in that state, just introduced articles of impeachment as well against RFK Jr. So you're noticing something of a pattern here. Like every random Democrat in the House who's trying to either face a primary challenge or get their name out there for some type of publicity or whatever, they're all just like, impeach this person, impeach that person. Let's all impeach. And so clearly, right, House Democrat leadership is getting the opposite of what they want at the moment.
Today, I am formally introducing articles of impeachment against RFK Jr. I announced my intent to start impeachment proceedings against RFK in September, and today we're doing it. Secretary Kennedy is driving up cost, endangering lives, undermining public health, betraying public trust, and threatening Michigan families and our world-class research institutions. These are violations of his oath of office. We are in a public health emergency. It is time to protect science, protect lives, and to hold him accountable.
I mean, what even are the impeachable offenses here? She tried to say he's raising the cost of healthcare, or I disagree with him defunding certain institutions of health. Yeah, that's not an impeachable offense. That's not a crime. You know, it's not against his oath of office. So frankly, nobody has any idea. But of course, we know that the whole thing is performative. But what is the common trend here that we're seeing? And again, why I say I don't think House Democrat leadership will be ultimately successful in reining in this counterproductive behavior for their own party. Well, of course, Haley Stevens, really the only reason she is doing this is because she has announced she will be running for Senate in the state of Michigan in 2026. And guess what? Obviously, she wants to get her name out there, which is to say what? All of this is one big publicity stunt, but she's not alone. Of course, as it pertains to Representative Al Green, I mean, in fairness to him, the impeachment crap is nothing new, but it is worth noting that amidst the Texas redistricting, his current district number 9 was drawn out in the new Texas map. That will now be a red seat. So he's going to have to run in a brand new district in somewhere in the area, which is going to be much more of an electoral challenge. So he's trying to get his name out there. Of course, Shri Thanedar, it's also worth noting the reason why suddenly in 2025, this guy has announced a million times he's going to be impeaching Trump, impeaching different members of the cabinet, is because he's actually deeply unpopular within his own district. He's been facing multiple different other Democrat primary challengers for many years now. And so he's also trying to do the same, right? Save face, save the image. Why is that? Because by impeaching Trump or trying to make an attempt to do so by seeming like this no king's radical, of course, we know that is exactly where the Democrat voter base is, okay? They feel that way. They're angry at their leadership. And so by standing out and saying, no, I'm a real fighter, look at this performative impeachment I did, that's, of course, very good timing for what coming up very soon. Primary season. So long as primary season continues, I doubt you will get this trend of like random Democrats trying to impeach Trump to stop. No, if anything, it's going to increase. Now, that's not a very good thing going into election year, because what does your caucus overall fundamentally look like? A bunch of unserious clowns who keep just trying to impeach Trump over random garbage nonsense. But no, Hakeem Jeffries is not going to be able to rein in the situation for, of course, that very reason. And then if he publicly or even works to try to chastise the people doing the impeachment, what's going to happen? The voter base, who's already very skeptical and unhappy with him, they're going to say, no, screw you. We stand with the performative impeachment attempts. And so it's this kind of recurring feedback loop, where, of course, you know, Democrat leadership, again, probably understands that they have to have some degree of strategy, but they can't rein in their crazy representatives because the voting base is where? The actual liberals in this country are where? Not with Hakeem Jeffries, with the crazy representatives. And so that's, again, exactly why I say you're never going to get in the immediate future, anytime soon, some type of like sane Democrat party, because the voters themselves actually are that insane. And the leadership, even if they don't necessarily feel that way inside, are way too cowardly to do anything to stop it, which is yet another reason I'm going to say to folks, make sure you vote in the midterms. Make sure you, first of all, take good interest in the primaries. You know, we want to have solid candidates who are both conservative and electable up there. But these people cannot be allowed to take power, okay? And don't trust any speech they give. Oh, Hakeem Jeffries. No, we're not this radical party. We're moderate, because that's what everyone does during general election season. No, they're already currently showing you their cards. That's why Hakeem Jeffries is, again, pissed at Al Green, because they've done so. So make it clear, right? You know, if we don't show up to vote, if we don't turn out next year, these people are going to have power, right? Representative Al Green's going to be in leadership. All these impeachment clowns. Haley Stevens, by the way, the person who's currently impeaching RFK Jr. over nothing, is going to be the senator of the state of Michigan if we don't do our job. That's why we got to do our job. That said, guys, let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, God bless and peace.